So, there I was, standing in the middle of my own wedding reception, watching my new husband being physically restrained by his best man. A few feet away, two burly security guards were dragging my stepbrother, Kevin, towards the exit. He was kicking, screaming, a whirlwind of cheap suit fabric and pure rage. "You're a gold-digging bitch," he shrieked, his voice echoing through the suddenly silent ballroom. "You and your mother both. You stole my father." My mom was sobbing into her hands, her shoulders shaking. And my dad was just standing there, frozen, looking from his raging son to his crying wife to me, his face the color of ash. I held the microphone I had just snatched from Kevin's hand, my knuckles white. My heart was pounding a hole in my chest, but my voice, when I spoke to the head of security, was eerily calm. "Make sure he doesn't come back." You're probably thinking, what kind of monster has her own stepbrother thrown out of her wedding? Trust me, for most of my life, I would have asked the same question. But to understand how a day that was supposed to be the happiest of my life turned into an episode of Jerry Springer, we have to go back 6 months to a conversation I never should have had. It all started, as most of my family's problems do, with a misplaced sense of guilt. My dad's guilt, to be specific. I was sitting with him and my mom in their kitchen, showing them pictures of potential wedding venues on my laptop. The air was filled with the smell of coffee and the easy, happy chatter of wedding planning. My fiancé, Mark, and I were paying for the whole thing ourselves. We weren't millionaires, but we both had good jobs and had saved diligently. We wanted a day that was about us, a celebration of our love, not a display of my father's wealth. My dad, Richard, is a good man. He's kind, generous to a fault, and he loves my mom and me dearly. But he has an Achilles heel the size of a planet, and its name is Kevin. Kevin is his only son from his first marriage, a marriage that ended in a bitter divorce long before my mom ever entered the picture. My dad carries a deep, festering guilt about that divorce, a guilt that Kevin has expertly learned to weaponize for the past 2 decades. In the middle of a discussion about flower arrangements, my dad cleared his throat. "Honey," he started, his tone shifting to something more serious. "There's something I wanted to ask you." I looked up from the laptop. "What's up, Dad?" "It's about Kevin." A cold stone dropped into the pit of my stomach. My mom visibly tense beside me. Kevin was the family's third rail. We hadn't seen or spoken to him in at least 5 years, not since he'd caused a screaming scene at Thanksgiving because my dad refused to co-sign a loan for a ridiculously expensive sports car. His only communication since then had been periodic, desperate texts to my dad when he needed money. "What about him?" I asked carefully. "Well," Dad shifted in his chair. "This wedding, it's a big family event. A milestone. And, well, I was hoping you would invite him. It would mean the world to me to have both my kids there on your big day." I just stared at him. The silence was thick. Kevin and I were not kids who had a simple sibling rivalry. We were practically strangers who shared a parent. When my mom married my dad, I was 12 and Kevin was 14. He had hated me from day one. I wasn't just a new person in his house. I was the living, breathing symbol of his parents' failed marriage, the daughter of the woman who had replaced his mother. It didn't matter that his parents had been divorced for 3 years, and his mom was already remarried herself. In Kevin's mind, my mom and I were the villains of his story. His teenage years were a nightmare of passive aggression and outright hostility. He'd accidentally spill drinks on my homework, forget to give me messages, and talk loudly on the phone to his friends about the leeches his dad had moved in. After he left for college, things got blissfully quiet. He dropped out after 2 semesters and embarked on a series of get-rich-quick schemes, all funded by my dad, all of which failed spectacularly. "Dad," I said slowly, trying to keep my voice even. "I haven't spoken to Kevin in 5 years. He's made it very clear he wants nothing to do with me or Mom. Why would he want to come to my wedding?" "He's just been going through a hard time," Dad insisted, a line I'd heard 1,000 times. "He's lonely. I spoke to him the other day and he asked about you. I think he wants to reconnect. This could be the perfect opportunity to heal things." I glanced at my mom. Her face was a carefully neutral mask, but I could see the hurt in her eyes. She had tried for years to build a bridge with Kevin, only to have him spit on every olive branch she extended. Richard, maybe we shouldn't push, my mom said softly. It's Sarah's day. That's why I'm pushing, he said, his voice rising with frustration. I want our family to be whole. Just for one day. Please, Sarah. For me. I looked at my dad's pleading face. The man had given me everything. He'd stepped up and been more of a father to me than my own biological dad ever was. He wasn't asking for much, was he? Just one more seat at one more table. The people pleaser in me, the part that hated seeing him look so sad, took over. Against my better judgment, against the screaming alarms going off in my head, against the worried look Mark gave me when I told him later that night, I agreed. Okay, Dad, I sighed. I'll invite him. His face lit up with a brilliant smile of relief, and for a fleeting moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, I had done the right thing. Spoiler alert, I hadn't. The first red flag appeared about a month later. The RSVP deadline for the wedding came and went. Everyone had responded except, you guessed it, Kevin. I wasn't surprised, just annoyed. I called my dad. Hey, Dad. Have you heard from Kevin about the wedding? A heavy sigh on the other end of the line. I've left him a couple of messages, honey. He's probably just busy. Busy doing what? I muttered under my breath. My dad ignored me. I'll try him again, he promised. 2 days later, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. Yo, it's Kevin. Dad said you were buggin' about the wedding. Yeah, I'll be there. +1. That was it. No, hi Sarah, no, congratulations, no, sorry for the late reply. Just pure, unadulterated entitlement. I took a deep breath and typed back a polite great. Looking forward to seeing you. Can I get the name of your +1 for the seating chart? His reply came back instantly. Tiffany. Also, she wants to know if she can be in the family photos. She's a model and wants to get some professional shots for her portfolio. I had to read the text 3 times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. He was bringing a random girl I'd never met and was asking if she could essentially use my wedding as her personal photo shoot. My fingers trembled with rage as I typed. I'm sorry, but the family photos are for family only. I hit send before I could write something much, much worse. His reply was a single letter, K. I showed the exchange to Mark, who just shook his head. This is a mistake, Sarah. This guy is a walking disaster. I know, I said, feeling that familiar pit in my stomach. But I promised my dad. The second, much larger, red flag came a week after that. My dad called me, and his voice had that strained, awkward tone it always got when he was about to ask for something unreasonable on Kevin's behalf. Hi, honey. Quick question for you. What's wrong? I asked immediately. Nothing's wrong. Nothing at all. It's just. Kevin was looking at your gift registry. Oh no. And? I prompted, bracing myself. Well, he feels like, and this is just him, you know how he is, he feels like the gifts are a little impersonal. A toaster, towels. He wants to give you something more meaningful. Something from the heart. I was suspicious, but I tried to be optimistic. Okay, that's thoughtful of him. Yes, exactly. So, he had an idea for a gift. A gift that would really help you and Mark start your new life together, and it would help the whole family, really. Here it comes. He wants me, my dad said, speaking very quickly, to pay off his credit card debt. As a wedding gift. From him to you. The silence on the line was so profound I could hear my own blood pressure rising. His credit card debt, I repeated slowly, making sure I'd heard correctly. Yes, it's about $10,000. He said it would be such a weight off everyone's shoulders. A way to unburden the family as you two start your new chapter. I exploded. Are you kidding me? He wants you to pay off his debt and call it a gift to me? That's not a gift, Dad. That is the most manipulative, insane, narcissistic thing I have ever heard in my life. Now, Sarah, calm down, he said, already on the defensive. He just isn't good with money. His intentions are good. His intentions are to scam you out of 10 grand. I yelled, past the point of caring about being polite. This has nothing to do with me or my wedding. It is absolutely, 100%, not happening. And you know what? If he ever brings up money to you in the context of my wedding again, he is uninvited. I am dead serious. My dad was quiet for a long moment. Okay, honey, he said, his voice small and defeated. I'm sorry. I'll handle it. He promised me he'd make it clear to Kevin that the request was out of line and would never be discussed again. I wanted to believe him. I really did. The final, blood red, flapping in a hurricane-force wind flag was the rehearsal dinner. Mark and I had booked a private room at a nice Italian restaurant near the venue. It was supposed to be a relaxed, intimate evening with our bridal party and immediate family. Kevin and Tiffany, the model, showed up an hour late. The rest of us were already finishing our appetizers. He was wearing ripped jeans and a wrinkled band t-shirt. She was poured into a dress that was more appropriate for a nightclub than a family dinner. He didn't apologize for being late. Instead, he looked around the restaurant with a sneer. "Wow, Dad," he said loudly. "Couldn't spring for a place with a Michelin star?" My dad just laughed nervously. "It's a nice place, son. The pasta is great." Kevin spent the rest of the meal complaining about everything. The wine was cheap, the bread was stale, the music was cheesy. He ignored me and my mom completely, directing all his conversation at his dad, mostly about how he was between jobs and how expensive the city was. Then came the toasts. Mark's best man gave a funny, heartfelt speech. My maid of honor, my best friend since kindergarten, made everyone tear up. It was lovely. Then, before anyone else could speak, Kevin stood up and grabbed a water glass to tap with his fork. "Speech. Speech," he chanted, looking around as if he were a beloved celebrity. He cleared his throat. "I'm not going to say much tonight. I'm saving the good stuff for tomorrow," he said with a wink. My blood ran cold. But I just wanted to say, it's really great to see my dad so happy. Family is a complicated thing, you know? People come and go. But it's nice that my dad found someone to take care of him in his old age. He gave a pointed, smirking look directly at my mother. The insult hung in the air, thick and poisonous. My mom's smile froze on her face. Mark's hand found mine under the table and squeezed hard. My dad, the professional enabler, just chuckled and said, "All right, son, that's enough. Save it for the big day." I should have said something. I should have stood up right then and told him to get out. But I was a coward. I was so desperate to just get through the weekend without a major explosion that I let it slide. I smiled a tight, fake smile and pretended I hadn't heard the venom in his words. Mark looked at me, his eyes full of fury on my behalf. "We can still uninvite him," he whispered. "I'll do it. I'll call him tonight." "No," I whispered back, my throat tight. "Let's just get through tomorrow. For my dad. It's just one more day. One more day." It turns out one day is more than enough time to burn a lifetime of bridges. The wedding day itself started out perfect. The sun was shining. My dress was beautiful. The ceremony was a blur of happy tears and overwhelming love. Standing at the altar with Mark, saying our vows, I forgot all about Kevin. I forgot about everything except the wonderful man in front of me and the incredible future we were about to start. The reception was beautiful. The venue was glowing with fairy lights and flowers. Our friends and family were laughing, drinking, and celebrating with us. For a few hours, everything was perfect. We danced, we ate, we felt utterly surrounded by love. Then it was time for the speeches. Mark's best man was hilarious. My maid of honor was sweet. And then my dad got up. He gave a beautiful, touching speech about how proud he was of me and how happy he was to welcome Mark into the family. I was dabbing my eyes with a napkin. "And now," he finished, his voice thick with emotion, "I'd like to invite my son, Kevin, to say a few words." My head snapped up. This was not the plan. We had explicitly agreed, after the rehearsal dinner disaster, that only the best man, maid of honor, and my dad would speak. Kevin practically bounded up to the microphone, a smug, triumphant grin on his face. He snatched the mic from my dad's hand. "Thanks, Dad," he said, his voice booming through the speakers. He scanned the room, his eyes landing on me. "Wow, Sarah, you clean up nice." A few people tittered nervously. "You know," he started, pacing the floor a little. "I look at my dad, and I see how happy he is. And that's great. It is. It's a real shame my mom couldn't be here to see this. My real mom. But I guess that's what happens when a newer, younger model comes along and you get traded in." A collective gasp went through the room. It was dead silent. I could feel every eye on my mother, who looked like she'd been struck by lightning. Her face was chalky white. But he wasn't done. Oh no, he was just warming up. He turned his attention back to me. And Sarah. I mean, I've got to give you props. You and your mom, you really played the long game. Talk about a master plan. You came into our lives with absolutely nothing, and now. He made a grand, sweeping gesture at the ballroom, at the beautiful decorations and the catered meal that, I want to emphasize again, Mark and I had paid for. Look at all this. This is quite the upgrade from that crappy little apartment you used to live in. You really hit the jackpot, didn't you? My own breathing sounded like a freight train in my ears. Mark was half out of his seat, his face a mask of thunderous rage. Kevin raised his champagne flute. I guess I should be thanking you, actually. Now that you've got my dad's wallet on lockdown, maybe he'll finally have some cash left over for his actual son. He let that hang in the air for a moment, then gave a sick, self-satisfied smile. So here's a toast. To the happy couple. May you be as successful in your marriage as your mom was in her second. Cheers to the gold diggers. That's when I snapped. It wasn't a conscious decision. It was a primal, instinctual reaction. Years of swallowing his insults, of watching him hurt my mom and manipulate my dad, of being the good daughter who kept the peace, it all combusted inside me in a single, fiery explosion. I stood up from the head table. My chair screeched against the polished floor. I walked, with a purpose I had never felt before, directly toward him. He saw me coming, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes, but he held his ground. I didn't say a word. I just reached out, took the microphone from his limp grasp, and turned to face him. My voice was low, but it carried in the silent room. Get out. He scoffed, a nervous laugh escaping his lips. What? Are you crazy? I was just joking. I said, I repeated, my voice dropping even lower, turning to ice. Get out of my wedding. Now. You can't do this, he sputtered, his face turning red. Dad, tell her she's crazy. I didn't even look at my dad. My eyes were locked on the security guard we'd hired, who was already moving toward us. I pointed at Kevin. Please escort this man out of the building. That's when the chaos erupted. My dad rushed forward, grabbing my arm. Honey, no. Don't do this. He's your brother. He's had too much to drink, he doesn't mean it. I finally turned to look at my father, and I let him see all the pain and fury I had suppressed for 15 years. Oh, he means every word of it, Dad. And you know it. You have stood by and let him treat me and my mother like dirt for my entire life. But that ends tonight. This is my day. My wedding. My husband. And he is not welcome here. He leaves, or we do. My ultimatum hung in the air. My dad looked at me, then at Kevin, who was now being flanked by the 2 security guards. He saw the look on my face, the unshakable resolve, and he knew I meant it. He deflated, stepping back, utterly defeated. And that's when Kevin's bravado crumbled and the real toddler inside him came out screaming. The guards took his arms, and he started to struggle, unleashing that torrent of verbal abuse about me being a gold digger. Mark lunged forward, and his best man had to wrap his arms around his chest to hold him back. The room was a tableau of horror and shock. As they dragged him past our table, his girlfriend Tiffany simply stood up, grabbed her purse, and scurried out after him without a single word. The doors to the ballroom closed behind them, and the room was plunged back into a ringing, awful silence. The rest of the night is a bit of a blur. Our wedding planner, a saint of a woman, immediately took control, announcing a short 20-minute break. Mark, my mom, and my bridesmaids immediately formed a protective circle around me. I wasn't crying. I was shaking with adrenaline, a strange sense of calm washing over me. Mark held my face in his hands. Are you okay? I am so sorry. I should have stopped it. You have nothing to be sorry for, I said, my voice steady. I'm okay. I'm better than okay. I think I finally just grew a spine. My dad approached me, his eyes full of tears. Sarah, I am so sorry. Not now, Dad, I cut him off, holding up a hand. I can't. Not tonight. You need to leave. Go check on your son. It's clear where your loyalties are. It was cruel, but I was too raw to care. He flinched as if I'd slapped him and walked away, looking 100 years old. We managed to salvage the rest of the reception, mostly for our guests. We cut the cake, had our first dance, and our friends were absolute champions, forcing us onto the dance floor and keeping the mood as light as possible. But the shadow of what had happened lingered. The next week was hell. A constant barrage of texts and calls from my dad, which I ignored. Hateful, anonymous messages on social media that I knew were from Kevin. But through it all, Mark was my rock. He held me when I finally broke down and cried, not for the ruined wedding, but for the ruined family I was finally admitting I had. Eventually, I agreed to meet my dad for coffee. He looked awful. He'd lost weight, and his eyes were sunken. He didn't make excuses. He just sat there and admitted everything. He admitted that he'd enabled Kevin his entire life out of guilt. He admitted that he'd failed me by constantly prioritizing his deadbeat son's feelings over mine and my mother's. I told him it's over, he said, his voice cracking. I told him unless he gets professional help for his issues and gives a sincere, written apology to you, Mark, and your mother, he is completely cut off. Financially and from me. It's been 3 months since the wedding. Kevin, to absolutely no one's surprise, has not apologized. My dad, to my complete and utter shock, has actually stuck to his guns. Their relationship is basically non-existent, but my dad has started going to therapy. My relationship with him is still strained, but we're working on it. He's finally starting to act like the father I need him to be, not the ATM Kevin always wanted. As for me, kicking my stepbrother out of my wedding was the hardest, most liberating, and best decision I've ever made. It drew a line in the sand that should have been drawn 15 years ago. My marriage is stronger than I could have ever imagined, because we started it by facing down the ugliest of my family's demons together.